After spending most of my childhood in Sydney, Australia, I actually went back to Korea during high school. And here's where things get really interesting. I went to two different Korean schools, and the first one was an all-girls school. And they were very strict about your entire appearance. And so I had to have my hair really short, pretty like short like this actually. um, you couldn't have your hair longer than 3 centimeters below your ears. And they were very particular about like what socks you wear, what kind of sneakers you wear. You had to wear like white sneakers with white socks, ankle socks, not too high, not too low. They were very strict about the length of your skirt. So we all had school uniforms, and the skirt was not allowed to be higher than your knee, nor were the skirts allowed to be like too tight. Now, the other school that I went to, that was a co-ed, and it was a private school. They were a little more laxed about, the length of your hair. I actually grew out my hair because I had short hair for most of my childhood, and so I was like, oh, I'm gonna have long hair. And I grew it pretty long, and then I had long hair for like 20 years. And then I chopped it off. Same thing with like the school uniform. A lot of the girls, they wanted to make their skirts a little shorter, a little tighter, and some of them got away with it. I unfortunately could not get away with it because my mom was like super strict. She's super conservative, and she was like, don't fix your skirt. You can't have it too tight. You can't have your ass hanging out, things like that. Now, the school that I went to, it was a foreign language school in Busan, South Korea. And I had the option of going there or an international school in Busan, but that apparently at the time was like a boarding school, and I was like, I do not want to spend 24/7 at a school. And so we chose the foreign language school. So even though it was a foreign language school, all the classes, or most of the classes, were in Korean. We had different departments, so there was like the German department, the English, Chinese, and Japanese, and I, of course, was in the English. Not gonna lie, my English at the time was probably way better than any of the teachers there. So I didn't learn anything in my English classes, and I didn't learn anything in my Korean classes because I didn't know much Korean. I spoke a little bit, I understood a little bit, I read a little bit, and I wrote a little bit. I would say I was probably at like an elementary first or second grade. Now, my mother at the time, when I first came to Korea, she wanted me to learn more Korean, so she had a private tutor come to our house every week. And it was called 눈높이. 눈높이, I guess it translates to like high eyes or something like that. And it's kind of like, it's like an academy, it's a well-known academy. And the teacher came, and when she saw me, she was like, oh, where's your little sister? Because she was expecting a little girl, first or second grade. And I told her, I said, oh, well, actually, I'm the student here, and I'm in high school. And she just was like, oh, okay. And I learned some Korean there. My uncle tried to teach me, some Korean history, politics, the economy, things like that. But anyways, let's get to some interesting things that I went through in my Korean high school. The first time that I really got beat up at school was in my math class. Now, you have to remember, Korea at the time, corporal punishment was legal, and so most of the schools, and even at home, beating a kid up was just normal. And it was in math class. The bell rang, all the kids are going back to their seats, and my math teacher, he was my homeroom teacher at the time, and he was just like this. He was small and petite for a man, but he had a temper, and he was scary. Now class starts, I'm sitting in the second row to the front, and I'm kind of trying to reach for something in my bag, and I feel something super wet all over my hands and all over inside my backpack. I'm just like, what the hell is this? And I reach my hand back up and it's sunscreen. Just like, oh fuck, like, okay, I gotta clean all this up. And so I'm asking my friend who's sitting next to me like for some tissues, and then I just get smacked right in the face with a chalkboard eraser. And I look up and my teacher is glaring at me, and he's like, "Kim Sojang, 집중 안 하나?" And that means focus, Sojang. That's my Korean name. And I was trying to explain, like, my hands are wet, like, I need to wipe this up. And he was just like, focus, you shouldn't be doing anything else. And he just started screaming at me. And then as he's turning around to write some more math problems on the board, I lost my temper. And mind you, I was a very angry, bitchy, moody, hormonal teenager at the time, like most teenagers. And I just kind of like hit the table. But I hit it a little harder than I wanted to. And he turns around and he's like, "What did you just do?" And he comes marching up. I mean, I'm in the second row, so he's like 2-3 feet away. Comes up and he starts smacking the crap out of me like this. I felt like a ping pong. He was just like this, and I'm trying to lean over to get away from him. And then my classmate sitting next to me, she's like leaning over, trying not to get smacked in the chaos. And then that didn't satisfy him. He grabs my hair and he kind of drags me up off of my seat, and he drags me down the class, out of the classroom, and then he made me kneel in front of the classroom with my hands like this. And I was in that position for like 40 minutes until break time. Break time comes around and I was expecting him to be like, "Okay, that's enough, go to break." But nope. He's like, "Stay there." And he goes to the teacher's lounge. So I'm just like this, and all the students and the teachers are walking by, and there's this thing that Korean adults like to do. They make a sound like this. And basically it means they're disappointed, or, they disapprove of something. So I got a lot of the as the teachers are walking by, just like this. Another time, and funny enough, it was a different math teacher. It was break time and I went next door to visit my friends. I almost ran into her by the classroom door, and she looks at me like just glaring at me, and I'm just like, I don't know what I did wrong. Like, why is she giving me a dirty look? And then she starts poking me like right here on my forehead like this. She's doing this. She's doing this. And she's like, "You think you're all that, huh? You think you're so good, huh? You know nothing but English. You're just going to college because you know English. You are not good at anything else." And she just continued to just put me down and make me feel really shitty about myself. She did that for like a good 5-10 minutes. And I was left with like, what the heck was that about? Now, a lot of the teachers at the time at the high school, they did not like me. They thought that I had it easy, mainly because, yes, my English was very fluent, and they didn't like the fact that I had this easy pass to college. So I didn't go the traditional route. Most Korean students, they take the Korean SATs, 수능. And so all my friends, all my classmates, they were busy studying all day, every day. And I just had to take this English exam. It was like this national English exam called TOEIC, TOEIC. And I got a good score. It was enough for me to go to college. But the teachers didn't like that. And even though I didn't have to be at school, especially like for the after hours, all the students had to study even after school for the Korean SATs. School for us, especially during our senior year of high school, the first class started at 7 a.m. and it went all the way to 6 p.m. And then we had dinner at the school, so lunch and dinner at the school. And then from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. was like an after school program thing where everyone had to do like free studying. And it's called 자율학습. And I did not have to study for the SAT. I had already been admitted, like it was like an early admission to the college through my English exam. And so I didn't do any studying. I just read my English books, my novels. And at the time I was really into romance novels. My mom made sure that my resume was ready for the early admissions. And she entered me into a lot of public speaking contests. They were English speaking competitions where I would just write up a speech about whatever topic is assigned, and I would write anywhere between like a 3 to 5 minute speech, memorize it, and then stand in front of people and give a speech. It was through those competitions where, I got a few prizes here and there. A lot of them were, monetary prizes. And so it was that, and then my TOEIC score and extracurricular activities. So I was the youngest English Korean interpreter at the 2002 Asian Games, which was held in Busan. And I went to Bexco at the time. It was this huge convention center, and I just translated or helped interpret English to Korean and vice versa to a lot of the international journalists that were there. So that was something that I also submitted. I also did some acting in high school. We did some performances. I even did a singing contest. I am not a singer. So that's how I went to college. And because of that, the teachers just did not like me. And I think a lot of the students, they were kind of like, oh, what the fuck, like she's just going to college because of her English. I had a lot of people in high school come up to me and they would pretend to be my friend, and they would be like, oh, can you help me with my English homework, or can you help me with this? And I did them all because I thought that they really wanted to be my friends. Learned my lesson then. The high school that I went to, in my opinion, was pretty intense because it was a private school. And private schools, especially at the time, tended to do whatever the heck they wanted. And it's funny because I barely even got into the school. My mother apparently had to go to the school because they rejected me at first, because you have to submit all your papers and like even your family history, things like that, and they saw that my parents were divorced and they actually declined my submission. So my mom went to the school, and she told me this later, and she said that she begged the principal there to allow me in. And I was mortified. I was like, why is my mom begging? She said that she was crying and begging for them to accept me. And they were very hesitant because my parents were divorced, and people at the time thought that kids who are from, divorced families, they are troubled teenagers or troubled kids, which was true in my case, but it was just really hurtful that they would judge me just based off of my parents' marital status. Now, there was a lot of hitting going on at that school, and the teachers got really creative. Some teachers, they liked to use their rulers. They had these little rulers. Some actually had these like thin sticks. And those were, in Korean, we call it 맵다, 매워. When you get hit, it's 매워. 매워 means spicy, but it basically means that when that thin stick hits your skin, it's like, oh, it's like a spicy, hot kind of stinging feeling. And so we're like, oh, 맵다, 매워. So they use that. Some teachers like to use their hands, like my math teacher. Some teachers like to use like huge canes. I remember the PE teacher. He loved to use, it was like a thick ass cane and was long. It was like really long, almost as tall as him. And he loved to just kind of like walk around with it. And then he would, because it's so long, he would be able to just like hit a kid, a few feet away. He was also in charge of the students who were late for school. And of course, I was late a few times. I mean, if school's starting at 7 a.m., think about it. For me, I had to travel almost an hour. I had to take 2 different buses from where I lived to my school. So you have to counter in like, the waiting for the bus. Sometimes the buses are late. I have to walk. We had to go up this hill. So from the bus stop, you get off, you go through the alleyways, and then there's like this whole curvy hill that we had to climb up. So it was at least like a 10-15 minute walk from the bus stop to the school, the front gate at least. Now for any kids who were late, even a minute late, you were locked outside the school. And the teacher would come, the PE teacher. He would come and collect all the kids who were late, and he would make us do planks on the school field. He would walk around, depending on how many minutes you were late. So I was, I think, like 10 minutes late. I got hit 10 minutes. I got hit 10 times. Other kids, there was one kid, he was late like 20 minutes. He got hit 20 times. Sometimes he would make us do squats, like do an Asian squat, put our hands on our ears like this, and then he would make us waddle around the field. Again, according to how many minutes you've been late. That's called the 오리걸음, which is like the duck walk. So you look like a duck waddling around. There was another one where you're kind of like a rabbit and you're jumping. So instead of like walking around the field or running, you're just kind of jumping around the field. That can get exhausting. Now in the classrooms, oh boy. So the teachers got really creative there. And what really sucked was a lot of the teachers, if one student made a mistake, let's say they forgot to hand in their homework, or whatever it is, the whole class would get punished. Sometimes they would make us climb on top of our desks. We had to kneel, and then the teacher would go around and hit the top of our thighs. That was really 매워. Sometimes we had to take off our shoes and our socks, and they would hit the soles of our feet. Sometimes we had to stand on our chairs, and they would go around and hit our calves. So you can imagine all the bruising that I got all over my body. I would come home just covered in bruises. They also hit our hands, but that was just like the basic method. A lot of the female teachers like to do that. But sometimes I would miss, and then they would hit like the bone, around your wrist area, and then like that area would bruise up. So I'll come home covered in bruises, and my family would just tell me, it's just Korean culture. That's just it. The PE teacher, he hit a student so hard one time that kid's arm broke. I remember his arm was in a cast for over a month. And I do remember seeing the kid's parents coming to the school, but that was it. It's like nothing happened to the teacher. He didn't stop beating the kids up. It was just a normal, everyday way of life. And funny enough, I grew accustomed to it, but at the same time, I was very angry and I had all this stored anger inside of me. Another time, the teacher actually, he didn't want to use his hands, and it was an empty classroom, and he grabbed one of those long like light bulbs that are hung up in the classrooms. He grabbed one of those and he started poking me in the stomach. He was poking me on the chest and the stomach, and I just walked out. I was like, this fucking sucks. A lot of the times I got in trouble because of little cultural differences. So in Australia, when I went to school, the teacher, if we get in trouble, the teacher was like, look at me when I'm talking to you. In Korea, if you look at the teacher in the eye when they're talking shit to you, oh, that is a big sign of disrespect. And I didn't know, and no one told me. And so they're, blabbing away, yelling at me in Korean. And I'm just like staring at them in the eye. And they would be like, what are you looking at? Put your eyes down. And they would just hit me even more. And the thing is, many of our teachers, they weren't cruel. A lot of them were actually really nice. But they were just doing what they were taught to do. It's just all part of the system. I think what they were trying to achieve is beyond just trying to educate you, but trying to control you and mold you and make you, live in fear so that you would listen. Some of our wounds, they don't just show up as bruises. These wounds stay with us, and it comes through as like fear of failure, perfectionism. And for me, by talking about this, I think I'm finally giving my younger self that voice, the voice that I never had growing up. Thanks for listening. See you next time.